Your grocery bill keeps going up. The price of fresh fruit keeps going up. And here in the United States of America, every time you walk through the produce section, you are paying more for fruit that was often picked before it was fully ripe, shipped thousands of miles, and then placed on a store shelf for you to buy. But here is what most Americans are never told. You do not need a big backyard to grow your own fresh, sweet fruit. You do not need acres of land. You do not need a traditional garden. And you certainly do not need to be an expert gardener. Right now, all across the United States, Americans are quietly harvesting fresh fruit from places you would never expect. Tiny balconies, apartment patios, front porches, driveways, small courtyards, and even a sunny corner right beside their back door. And they are doing it with specific, compact, and dwarf varieties that actually thrive in containers. Think about that for a moment. A single pot sitting on a sunny patio can become a productive little food source, producing fresh fruit year after year. And the container gives you something incredibly valuable: control. You control the soil, you control the drainage, you control the root space. You can move the plant when extreme weather arrives. And depending on the fruit tree and where you live in the United States, you may even be able to move the entire plant indoors when winter arrives. But there is a catch. Not every fruit tree belongs in a pot. Choose the wrong tree, and you can spend an entire growing season watching it struggle, produce very little, or eventually fail. Choose the right one, however, and that ordinary container sitting on your patio can become one of the most productive spots on your entire property. So today, I am showing you 8 fruit trees and fruiting plants that can thrive in pots, containers, and small spaces across the United States. And by the time we finish, you will also understand the container rules that can make or break your harvest. From the drainage mistake that causes root rot, to the cold root problem that can kill a perfectly hardy tree, to exactly how your container size should change as your fruit tree grows. Because you don't need more land. You need to know how to make the space you already have work for you. But before we dive into today's video, I have a major announcement. The gardening guide so many of you have been writing to me about and asking for is finally here. The Plant Once Garden is officially live. You have been incredibly patient with me while I took the time to get this right. It is approximately 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, gathered into one complete downloadable reference, designed with a hand-drawn heritage cover and warm cream pages that look and feel like a guide your grandmother would have owned. Inside, you'll find the 90 perennial plants that come back every year with almost no labor, 6 complete garden plans, the no-labor planting calendar, and the hydrogen peroxide method explained completely. I've also included the specific perennials that bring hummingbirds singing and dancing right outside your window, the chapter on what your garden becomes over 20 years, and the mistakes that kill perennials. Now, I deliberately made this a digital guide because I wanted to save you real money and make your life so much easier. When you're making an investment in a guide like this, the last thing you want is for a physical book to get ruined. Think about how we actually garden. Water splashes, mud gets everywhere. And if you bring a heavy 150-page book out to the yard or lug it around the plant nursery, it gets stained, torn, or damaged. Then your investment is gone, and you're forced to spend money all over again. With this soft copy, you are completely protected. You can open it right on your phone or tablet anywhere you go, especially when you're out shopping for new flowers. Or, you can look at the exact plan you need for the day and print out just a single slice of the book to take outside with you. If that single page gets filthy in the garden or you lose it, it doesn't matter at all. Your master copy stays permanently safe, and you can just print another fresh page. Even better, this isn't just an investment for you. It's an investment for your whole family. Once you have your digital copy, you can pass it right along to your children, your daughter-in-law, your grandchildren, or your neighbors, so they can build their dream gardens without spending another dime. It gives you complete freedom, protects your hard-earned money, and lasts a lifetime. This is a step-by-step reference guide you can lean on for the rest of your gardening life. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now, or click the link in the pinned comment or description below to get your copy today. Thank you again for your patience. Now, back to the garden. Number 1. Fig tree. If you want one fruit tree that makes an enormous amount of sense in a container, start with the fig tree. Figs are naturally well suited to being grown with restricted roots. In fact, many gardeners deliberately grow figs in containers because keeping the root system contained can help keep the tree manageable and can encourage the plant to focus its energy on fruiting rather than endless vegetative growth. This is what I call the root-bound secret. When a fig's roots encounter the boundaries of a container, the plant receives a very different signal from a tree growing freely in open ground. Instead of having unlimited room to keep expanding, the tree has a limited root system supporting a limited canopy. That restriction can help keep growth under control and, when the tree is otherwise healthy, can encourage earlier and more reliable fruit production. But there is an important distinction here. You want controlled root restriction, not a neglected, severely root-bound plant with circling roots, exhausted soil, and no room for water or nutrients. The goal is balance. Compact varieties such as Celeste and Brown Turkey are excellent choices to investigate for container growing. Their naturally manageable size makes them much easier to maintain than a large, vigorous fig allowed to spread freely. And there is another advantage. A potted fig can be placed in a warm, sunny position during the growing season and moved into a protected location when severe cold arrives. Figs love sunlight, so give yours as much direct sun as your space allows. Use a fast-draining container mix, keep the pot from sitting in standing water, and monitor moisture closely during hot weather. Remember, the container is not just holding the tree, it is the entire root environment. That means you control the soil, the drainage, the pot size, the fertilizer, and even the location. For a small space gardener, that level of control is powerful. Number 2. Meyer lemon. Next is a fruit tree that can make a sunny patio feel like a miniature citrus orchard. Meyer lemon. Meyer lemon is a hybrid, involving lemon and mandarin or orange genetics, and that helps explain why its fruit is generally sweeter, less sharply acidic, and thinner-skinned than many standard commercial lemons. The flowers are also wonderfully fragrant, and when the tree is carrying ripe yellow fruit, it becomes both productive and ornamental. But the biggest container advantage is mobility. If you live somewhere with cold winters, a Meyer lemon can be grown in a container and moved indoors when temperatures become dangerous. That changes the entire equation. Instead of asking, "Can this citrus survive my winter outside?" you can ask, "Can I give this citrus a bright enough protected place for winter?" A sunny window can work, and in darker conditions, supplemental grow lighting can help. The key is not to treat the container as a set-it-and-forget-it decoration. Citrus wants light, consistent moisture without waterlogging, good drainage, and regular nutrition. Containers also lose nutrients faster than ground soil because every watering can wash nutrients through the drainage holes. That is why potted citrus generally benefits from regular feeding with a balanced, slow-release fruit tree fertilizer during the growing season, following the product directions. And when summer arrives, watch the moisture. A container sitting in full sun can dry much faster than the soil around an in-ground tree. So if your dream is to walk outside and pick a lemon from a tree without owning an orchard, Meyer lemon deserves a serious look. Number 3. Blueberry bush. Now let's talk about one of the biggest money-saving container fruits, blueberries. Blueberries are not technically trees, but they absolutely belong on this list because a blueberry bush can produce a surprising amount of fruit from a very small footprint. And container growing gives you one major advantage that is difficult to control in ordinary garden soil: acidity. Blueberries require strongly acidic soil, generally around pH 4.5 to 5.5. That is much more acidic than the soil preferred by most garden plants. In the ground, your native soil, minerals, irrigation water, and surrounding materials can gradually push the pH away from the range blueberries need. But in a container, you can build a dedicated acidic growing environment. That is the pH trick. Instead of trying to change an entire garden bed, you create a relatively small pot filled with an appropriate acidic mix, commonly using ingredients such as peat moss and pine bark, depending on your local recommendations and growing system. This makes the blueberry's root environment much easier to manage. Varieties such as Sunshine Blue or Top Hat are especially interesting for small spaces because they are compact and can remain manageable in containers. And once you see a blueberry bush loaded with fruit, you understand why this is such a smart use of limited space. The flowers appear first, then small green berries develop. Slowly, they swell and change color until you are standing there with a container full of sweet, fresh blueberries. But remember one thing, blueberries are not ordinary potted plants. Do not use random garden soil, assume the pH is correct, and hope for the best. Give them the acidic conditions they require, maintain consistent moisture, and make sure the container drains properly. A good container can turn a difficult soil requirement into one of the easiest things for you to control. Number 4. Dwarf peach. If you want real, full-sized peaches from a tree that can fit into a small space garden, take a look at dwarf peaches. These trees are produced using dwarfing rootstocks or compact growth characteristics that allow them to remain dramatically smaller than standard peach trees. Depending on the variety and growing conditions, a dwarf peach may top out around 4 to 6 feet. That is a completely different proposition from a standard fruit tree that can become much too large for a balcony, patio, or tiny backyard. And here is what makes the dwarf peach so appealing. The tree may be small, but the fruit is not miniature. You can still get standard-sized peaches from a properly grown dwarf tree. For a gardener with limited space, that is exactly what you want. A smaller plant without giving up the experience of harvesting real fruit. There is also a balcony advantage that is easy to overlook. A containerized dwarf peach can be rotated to improve sunlight exposure, provided the container is manageable and the plant is not being constantly disturbed. And in areas threatened by heavy frost, a potted tree may be easier to move under cover or into a more protected position than a tree planted permanently in the ground. Of course, peaches need plenty of sun, regular watering, good drainage, feeding, and appropriate pruning. And pruning is particularly important in a container. You are not trying to create the biggest possible tree. You are trying to create a productive tree that stays in proportion to its root system and available space. That means regular pruning can keep the canopy compact and encourage new fruiting wood without allowing the tree to become a giant that overwhelms your patio. If you have always assumed peaches require a huge orchard, a dwarf container variety may completely change your thinking. Number 5. Pomegranate. Number 5 is one of my favorite choices for hot, sunny, small spaces. The pomegranate. Pomegranates are exceptionally drought-tolerant once established and handle hot weather very well. That makes them particularly attractive for gardeners who live in warm climates or who want a fruiting plant that does not demand constant attention every hour of the day. A pomegranate can also be beautiful before you ever harvest a single fruit. Its flowers are ornamental, and the plant itself can become a striking feature on a patio or terrace. That means you are getting 2 jobs from one container, a decorative plant and a fruit-producing plant. For container growing, a larger pot is important. A 15-gallon container is a useful target for a mature pomegranate, with excellent drainage. And once again, drainage is not optional. A drought-tolerant plant does not mean a plant that wants to sit in water. In fact, a pot that remains saturated can create exactly the kind of root problems that container gardeners are trying to avoid. Give the pomegranate sun, use a fast-draining growing medium, water thoroughly when needed, and then allow the growing medium to move toward the appropriate moisture level, rather than leaving the roots permanently soaked. Pomegranates also naturally lend themselves to being kept compact. With thoughtful pruning, you can maintain a manageable shape that fits the space you actually have. And when those flowers appear and eventually become developing fruit, the plant becomes a focal point rather than simply another pot sitting against the wall. If your growing conditions are warm and sunny, pomegranate is absolutely worth considering. Number 6. Patio raspberry or blackberry. Now, if your space is extremely limited, do not overlook berries. Patio raspberries and blackberries can provide a huge amount of fruit without requiring a traditional fruit tree. The key is choosing the right variety. You do not want to take an aggressive, sprawling bramble, put it in a pot, and assume the problem is solved. Some brambles spread through underground suckers or produce long, vigorous canes that quickly become difficult to manage. Instead, look for specifically selected dwarf or patio varieties. Raspberry shortcake is one example of a compact raspberry designed for container growing and small spaces. The big advantage is containment. Instead of allowing aggressive growth to take over a garden bed, the container keeps the root system confined and the plant's footprint manageable. And for gardeners who want easier harvesting, thornless or low-thorn varieties can make the experience much more pleasant. Imagine having a productive berry plant beside a patio door, on a small terrace, or along a sunny balcony. You can walk outside, reach into the foliage, and pick ripe berries without needing a huge garden. But do remember that berries are living plants with real water and nutrient requirements. A container can dry quickly, especially when the canes and leaves are exposed to full summer sun. Regular watering is essential during active growth and fruit development. And because container plants have a limited amount of soil, feeding matters too. Nutrients wash out of containers faster than they do from the ground, especially when you are watering frequently. That is why a balanced, slow-release fruit tree or fruiting plant fertilizer, used according to its label during the growing season, can be important. The right variety turns the raspberry or blackberry from a sprawling garden problem into a productive small-space crop. And that is exactly what we are looking for. By the way, if you're looking to completely transform your yard into a low-maintenance paradise, don't forget that my full 150-page guide, The Plant Once Garden, is available right now. We specifically created this as a digital guide to protect your investment from getting ruined by garden mud or water, saving you from ever having to repurchase it. You can take it anywhere on your phone while plant shopping, print out a single slice of the book to take into the dirt, or share it with your daughter-in-law and grandkids. Scan the QR code right here on the screen, or find the link in the pinned comment below to get your copy today. Now, let's get right back into today's topic. Number 7. Dwarf apple. Number 7 is the classic fruit tree many people assume they cannot grow in a small space, the apple. But the word that changes everything is dwarf. A dwarf apple is grafted onto dwarfing rootstock, such as M27 or M9, depending on the tree and production system. That rootstock helps control the ultimate size and vigor of the tree. Instead of allowing an apple tree to become a massive backyard specimen, you can choose a dwarf form designed to remain much smaller, often in the range of 6 to 8 feet or less, depending on the rootstock, variety, pruning, and conditions. That makes a tremendous difference. A small patio suddenly becomes enough room for an apple tree. A narrow side garden can become productive, and a balcony or terrace with enough structural support and sunlight may even be able to accommodate an appropriately sized container-grown apple, provided the container weight and local conditions are suitable. The real magic is that the fruit itself is still an apple. You are not growing a miniature novelty fruit. With the right variety and care, a dwarf tree can produce standard crisp apples. But there is one thing you must check before buying: pollination. Some apple varieties need a compatible pollination partner nearby, while others are partially or fully self-fertile. If you only have room for one tree, choosing a suitable self-fertile or partially self-fertile variety can make your life much easier. But local conditions and variety compatibility still matter. And remember, a container apple is not a set-and-forget plant. The canopy needs to stay proportional to the root system. That means pruning is not simply about making the tree look neat. It is about controlling size, maintaining good light penetration, encouraging productive fruiting wood, and preventing the canopy from becoming too large for the container. A dwarf apple is proof that you do not need acres to grow one of the world's most familiar fruits. Number 8. Kumquat. And finally, we have the kumquat. If you want a fruit tree that is productive, ornamental, evergreen, and naturally suited to container life, kumquat is difficult to ignore. Kumquats are citrus, but unlike many citrus fruits, their small fruit has a sweet, edible skin. That means you can eat the fruit whole. The flavor gives you a fascinating combination of sweet skin and tart interior, and the bright orange fruits can appear in clusters against dark green evergreen foliage. That makes the kumquat valuable even when it is not producing fruit. It is an ornamental plant, It is a container plant, and it is a fruiting plant. Kumquats are also relatively winter hardy, compared with many other citrus varieties, although exactly how hardy they are depends on the cultivar and local conditions. In colder climates, container growing gives you an enormous advantage because you can move the plant into protection when severe freezing weather arrives. That mobility is one of the biggest reasons container citrus makes sense. You are not asking the plant to survive every extreme your climate can deliver in the ground. You can help it. Give it plenty of sunlight, excellent drainage, appropriate watering, and regular nutrition during active growth. And when the weather turns dangerously cold, move it into a suitable protected location. For someone with a small patio, Kumquat can feel like a little evergreen fruit tree that belongs in a much larger garden. Now, before you choose any of these 8 plants, there are 3 container rules you absolutely need to understand. Rule number 1. Drainage is not optional. Every container must have drainage holes. I cannot emphasize this enough. One of the biggest reasons container fruit trees fail is that their roots remain wet for too long. When water cannot escape, air is pushed out of the growing medium. Roots need oxygen. When the root zone stays saturated, roots can weaken, rot, and eventually die. So before you even think about fertilizer, pruning, or fruit production, look at the bottom of the pot. Does water have a clear path out? If the answer is no, fix that problem first. And never assume that putting rocks in the bottom automatically solves drainage. The growing medium itself needs to be porous and fast draining. Standard garden soil or ordinary topsoil is usually a poor choice for containers because it can compact. Once compacted, the roots can struggle to receive the air and water balance they need. Instead, use a specialized container mix designed to drain well. A typical approach is a blend involving coarse potting soil, perlite, and bark, adjusted for the particular crop. The goal is a root environment that holds enough moisture and nutrients while allowing excess water to escape. Rule number 2. Respect the cold root. Rule here is something many new container gardeners discover the hard way. The ground protects roots. Deep soil does not experience the same rapid temperature swings as a container sitting above the ground. When a plant is growing in the earth, the surrounding soil provides insulation. But when the entire root system is sitting inside a pot, freezing temperatures can penetrate much more quickly. That means a plant that is perfectly hardy in the ground can be less hardy in a container. A useful rule of thumb is that a plant rated hardy to zone 6 in the ground may need conditions closer to zone 8 when its roots are exposed in a container. This is not an exact universal conversion for every plant, but it illustrates the problem. The roots are more vulnerable. So when severe freezing temperatures arrive, you may need to shelter the pot, move it into a protected location, or otherwise protect the root system according to the plant's needs. The cold root rule is one of the biggest reasons containers can actually be an advantage. You can move them. Rule number 3. Prune for proportion. The goal of a container fruit tree is not to produce the biggest possible canopy. The goal is to create the largest healthy harvest that your available root system and growing space can support. That means regular top and canopy pruning is important. When the canopy becomes enormous while the root volume remains limited, the plant can become difficult to manage. Thoughtful pruning helps keep the tree balanced with its root volume. It also allows light to reach more of the canopy and encourages fresh fruiting wood where appropriate. Think of pruning as space management. You are telling the tree, this is the amount of space I have, so let's make this space productive. And there is one final piece of the container puzzle: pot size. When you bring home a young fruit tree, you do not automatically need the biggest container you can find. Young trees can start in approximately 5 to 7 gallon containers. As the tree grows and develops a larger root system, you can upgrade to a 15 to 20 gallon pot, depending on the plant and its mature size. Why not start with an enormous pot? Because a container that is far too large can hold more water than the small root system can use. That creates a wet environment around roots and can increase the risk of root problems. So instead of thinking, bigger is always better, think, appropriate is better. Start with a suitable container, monitor the root system, and increase the pot size as the plant grows. And remember that potted fruit trees also need regular nutrition. In the ground, roots can explore a huge volume of soil. In a container, the available nutrients are limited. Then you water. Then nutrients can wash out through the drainage holes. That is why potted fruit trees generally need regular feeding during the growing season, from spring into early autumn. A balanced, slow-release fruit tree fertilizer can provide a steady supply of nutrients when used according to its label. And watering deserves just as much attention. Containers dry much faster than the ground, particularly when they are sitting in full sun during hot weather. During peak summer heat, some container fruit plants may need daily watering, but do not water according to a calendar alone. Check the growing medium and the plant's needs. The objective is consistent moisture without keeping the roots permanently saturated. There are also 3 simple questions you should ask before placing any fruit tree in a container. First, does it get enough sunlight? Most fruiting plants need strong light to produce the energy required for flowering and fruit development. A shady balcony may be comfortable for you, but it may not be productive enough for a fruit tree. Second, can you actually manage the container? Remember that wet soil is heavy. A large 15 or 20-gallon container can become extremely difficult to move once it is filled and planted. Decide where the plant will live before you fill the pot, especially if you expect to move it indoors during winter. Third, does the variety match your climate? A dwarf tree is still the same basic plant. A small citrus tree does not suddenly become cold hardy simply because it is growing in a pot. Choosing the right variety for your conditions is just as important as choosing the right container. And if you are growing more than one fruiting plant, think about how they will fit together. Do not place a large container directly in front of a smaller plant and then wonder why the smaller plant receives no sunlight. Arrange containers according to mature height, sunlight needs, and access. You want enough room to water, prune, harvest, and inspect the plants. The best small space garden is not the one with the most pots. It is the one where every pot is productive and manageable. So let's bring everything together. If you have a tiny patio, consider the fig. If you want citrus that can move indoors, consider Meyer lemon. If you want a small space fruit crop and can provide acidic soil, look at blueberry. If you want real peaches from a small tree, look for a dwarf peach. If you garden in a hot, sunny climate, pomegranate deserves attention. If you want berries without allowing aggressive brambles to take over the garden, choose a compact patio raspberry or blackberry. If you dream of growing apples without owning an orchard, investigate dwarf apples. And if you want evergreen beauty with bright orange edible fruit, consider kumquat. The bigger lesson is this: your garden is not defined by the amount of land you own. It is defined by what you can grow in the space you have. A balcony can hold fruit. A patio can hold fruit. A tiny courtyard can hold fruit. Even a small sunny corner can become productive when you choose the right plant, the right container, the right soil, and the right care. You do not need to fight nature. You need to work with the plant's natural growth habit. Choose compact varieties. Control the root environment. Give the container excellent drainage. Protect exposed roots from severe cold. Keep the canopy proportional through pruning. Feed consistently. Water according to conditions. And suddenly, that tiny space that looked useless becomes a source of fresh food. If you're ready to stop wasting time on plants that die every winter and finally build a garden that takes care of itself, don't forget to download your copy of The Plant Once Garden. It's 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, completely mapped out for you. We chose to offer this as a soft copy to make sure you get the absolute most value for your money. This is a real investment in your home, and a physical book out in the garden is just waiting to get ruined by mud, water, or dirty hands. Nobody wants to pay twice for the same book. With this format, you get maximum freedom and total peace of mind. Take it with you everywhere on your phone. It's so easy to check while you're out buying new plants, or print just the exact page you need for the day's project. If that sheet gets muddy or lost, your master copy remains 100% safe, and you can reprint a fresh page. You get lifetime access, total protection against damage, and a resource you can freely share with your friends, children, or grandchildren. It is truly the smartest, most economical way to secure these blueprints forever. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now, or click the link in the description below to get your copy today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.